I never intended to invite you. We don't want you here. That's what my only brother said. My brother's wedding, a family event that only happens once in a lifetime. And I know I've been excluded. My name is Sabrina. I don't understand why I'm often the only one not invited to family gatherings. I always trusted them. I told myself maybe they just forgot it's nothing personal. I held on to that thought for too long. Maybe a part of me believed that if I just remained helpful and kind, they would eventually pay attention to me again. Last year, they completely skipped my birthday dinner. All I got was a brief message from my mom, "Happy birthday, Sabrina." No emojis, no warmth, just Helen standing by me. She occasionally calls and asks something no one else does. "Don't you feel lonely?" She is the only one proud of me when I left home to build my own career. The rest of the family sees my digital marketing job as just playing around on the computer. They have no idea that I've been financially successful. I never brag about it and they never ask. So when I received the invitation to Travis's wedding last month, I couldn't believe it. Printed on thick cardstock with gold lettering, the card read, "You are cordially invited to the wedding of Travis Anderson and Laura Gale." The wedding date is May the 15th, held at an upscale garden in the city, followed by a reception at a lakeside resort. My hands trembled with excitement. I thought this was a sign. I spent weeks picking out a stunning dress and the perfect gift. I made an appointment for my hair and nails. For so many years, all I wanted was to be recognized, to be helpful, to be needed. And finally, I thought that moment had come. I believed this invitation would break the ice between me and my family, that I would finally be welcomed, that I would finally be seen. I had no idea how wrong I was. A day before the wedding, I drove to Aunt Helen's My Heartlight. I wanted to show her the surprise gift I planned to give my brother at the wedding. When I arrived, she seemed a little surprised, but welcomed me warmly as always. "I can't wait for tomorrow," I said, hugging her with excitement. But there was a hint of sadness in her eyes, a touch of guilt. "How have you been, Sabrina?" "Would you like some coffee?" she asked, leading me into the living room. I could hear the tension in her voice. On the coffee table was an unusual photo album. While she was making coffee in the kitchen, I opened it without thinking. Inside were familiar faces. My whole family was smiling in a beautiful garden. "Ms. Helen, what is this about?" I asked as she returned with a coffee tray. I noticed her hands were slightly shaking. "Oh, Travis's wedding last weekend." She hesitated. "Sabrina, I wanted to tell you I tried to call but didn't have the courage." My heart stopped. A wedding. She sat down next to me and took my hand. "You think it's tomorrow, right?" "I can't believe they did that, deliberately giving you the wrong date," I objected. "I told Travis and your parents that this was a cruel act." Trembling. But I got the invitation. I was prepared. Anger flared in my voice. But I got the invitation. I was prepared. The anger ignited in Helen's eyes. "They intentionally left you out." I almost didn't go for that reason. But in the end, thinking of you, I felt incredibly regretful. I picked up the album and flipped through the pages. Everyone was there. A beautiful garden ceremony with fairy lights and champagne glasses. Everyone was dressed nicely. Even distant relatives I hadn't seen in years were present. There were vows, speeches, dancing, and group photos. This was not a small, private event. This was a real wedding. My only brother's wedding, a family event that happens once in a lifetime. My face felt hot and my mouth was dry like desert sand. I needed to confirm this. I said and stood up. Helen grasped my hand tightly. "Sabrina, wait. Before confronting them, know that you are strong. You have always been, but this is cruel. You shouldn't go alone. I will go with you." I took a deep breath. "Thank you, Helen, but this is something I have to do on my own." She nodded. "Thank you, Helen, but this is something I have to do on my own." She nodded. "All right, but no matter what happens, I'll always be here for you. I always have been. I always will be." Bolstered by her words, I got in the car and drove toward my parents' house. My mind was spinning and my heart was in chaos. If it weren't for Helen's solid support, I don't think I could have been this strong. She was the only one who admitted how isolated I'd been in the family. The only one who sometimes spoke up against it. When I arrived home, I didn't just see my parents' car, I also saw a familiar black SUV in the driveway. It was Travis's car. My hands trembled as I opened the door. Laughter echoed from the living room. There they were, my parents, my brother Travis and Laura, clearly the bride, though now they were dressed casually instead of in white. They were laughing about a wedding photo shoot. The moment I stepped inside, the conversation stopped. Everyone turned to look at me. For a moment, the room fell silent. "So, Sabrina," my mother said, surprised, "what are you doing here?" "I came from Aunt Helen's," I said, though my voice didn't sound like mine at all. "She told me the wedding was last weekend." I didn't miss the look exchanged between Travis and Laura. Laura's lips pressed into a thin line. "Oh, yes," my mother said, avoiding my gaze. "It was a beautiful small ceremony." I was thinking about the album. There were over 50 people there, and I got an invitation to a ceremony happening tomorrow. "Yeah," Travis said suddenly, his voice tired. "Because we never intended to invite you?" The atmosphere shifted. No one stopped him. "We didn't want you to ruin our wedding," he said, looking directly at me. "You're always silent, always in the background, but somehow everything goes wrong around you. People don't know how to act when you're there. I wanted to have the perfect day in my life, and that means no you." A sharp pain shot through my chest. Every strange look, every feeling of being pushed aside that I had brushed off, all crystallized. "At that moment, have you felt that way for a long time?" I asked. "Have we all felt that way?" My mother whispered, but her words were very clear. "Honestly, Sabrina, you've always been like a ghost, leaving no trace, but still needing to be tended to at family events." "We're just Sabrina?" "They didn't mean it that way," my father interrupted hurriedly. "We just wanted to keep the wedding small," my mother said to him, calm and cold. "You're breaking the peace we've spent years building in this family." "Peace, huh?" I stared at her, unable to believe it. By ignoring me and cutting me off completely, Travis sighed. "Let's just end this conversation. We've been trying to avoid this. This is exactly why we didn't invite her," he said, looking at my parents like I wasn't even there. "You know what I mean?" he said coldly and clearly. "We don't want you here." Time seemed to stop. No one moved. "I get it," I finally said. I turned on my heel and walked out of the house. Before getting in my car, I called Aunt Helen. "Thank you for always being there for me." "Always, Sabrina," she replied softly. "You kids are my family, and family isn't just about blood. It's built on love and respect." Her words echoed inside me. They gave me the strength to decide what I would do next. On the drive home, I couldn't stop listening. Travis's words, you know what I mean. I kept repeating them, as if I were an uninvited guest who refused to acknowledge the message, even though all the signs had been there for years. Like believing that I still had a place in their lives was a burden. Hot tears streamed down my face as I gripped the steering wheel. It wasn't the memory of the wedding that broke me. It was the sheer clarity, the undeniable confirmation that I was no longer a part of them, that I was unwelcome. But here's the most important thing. I'm not someone seeking revenge. I'm not clinging to petty grievances. I don't want to hurt anyone. What I want, what I need, is to finally let go. Let go. No more hope. No more showing up with a smile. No more being nice as a bargaining chip, hoping for a seat at their table. That night, I started planning. Not for revenge, but for something longer, lasting, something they would never expect because they never cared to know the real me. The first step was financial. The truth is, I've been doing well for the past few years. I work in digital marketing. Not a billionaire, but quite comfortable, especially since moving into real estate management. I've made some great investments. No one ever asked about my life. So they don't know that I currently own 3 rental properties. They don't know that I've been quietly covering my parents' expenses through anonymous donations from my LLC, roof repairs, plumbing issues, even property taxes. I never needed recognition. I just wanted to support them because they are my parents. The next day, I reached out to Sandra Kim, my attorney. She's the sharp woman who handles my real estate investments. After I explained the situation, she acted immediately. "They've emotionally abused you for years," she said, taking notes. "And now, even though they depend on you financially, this is how they treat you." "That's right," I said. "I don't think they even realize how much I've supported their lives. But to be honest, I don't want to keep doing that. I need to protect myself." Sandra nodded. "We can file for a restraining order. If there's evidence of emotional abuse and harassment, the court might approve it." In the following days, I gathered everything. Records of ignored invitations, screenshots from group chats, wedding photos, and the most outrageous thing was an invitation to a wedding that had taken place a week earlier. A month later, the court approved the temporary restraining order. With Chandra's help, I sent the legal documents to each family member. It prohibited them from coming near me physically and restricted all online contact. And one more thing, I signed official papers to cut off financial support for their home repairs. I froze the accounts. The first call was from my mom. "Sabrina, what is this?" she cried. "We're your family." "Not anymore," I replied gently. "For years they've made it clear that I'm not part of this family. Now I'm just formalizing it." "This is ridiculous," she said. "What are we then?" I asked. "Just pretending I don't exist? Erasing me, is that how they treat family?" After a moment of silence, she whispered, "Is it about money? You're mad because we need your help." "I didn't even know you were paying for repairs until I saw the notice." Those words sent chills down my spine. That's exactly the problem. You never understood. And I hung up. Then came a barrage of angry messages from Travis, threatening to take me to court, calling me crazy and blaming me for my parents' financial troubles. But the most surprising reaction came from my dad. He contacted my lawyer and sent me an official letter, the only method allowed under the restrictions. "Sabrina," he wrote, "I've silently watched as you've been pushed out of the family. My cowardice has led us here. If legal action is necessary, perhaps that's what we deserve. I just want you to know that I'm sorry. If I had been a better father, this might not have happened." Reading his letter, I felt a twinge of pity, but the pain was still fresh. The wounds were still deep. The restraining order was still in effect. Sandra handled their constant questions about finances. Eventually, they understood this wasn't a joke. I was no longer part of their lives, and I was ready to face the consequences of their careless words and actions. But this was just the beginning. A few days after the restraining order was issued, I was finally ready to take the hardest step. That day, Sandra called me. "Sabrina, about your parents' house. It's legally ready. It's yours. You have the right to evict them. What do you want to do?" "Send an eviction notice," I said without hesitation. That little house was the last thread connecting me to them. Originally, it wasn't mine. It once belonged to my grandparents. Then it was passed down to my mom. Years ago, when my parents fell behind on payments, I quietly bought out my mom's share. Legally, I own it all, but no one in the family ever updated their assumptions. They viewed it as the family's shared property. Everyone used it on weekends, holidays, even during the summer. Eventually, after retiring, my parents decided to live there full time, and I agreed, but then I no longer wanted to live there. I was ready to take it back. The following Monday, I drove to the cabin with Marcus Finley, another lawyer. The sheriff accompanied us as a precaution. When we arrived, my dad came out to greet us at the door. He looked older, his hair almost gray. "Sabrina," he said weakly, "you're not coming in." "No," I replied. "Marcus, please explain." Marcus cleared his throat and handed my dad an official envelope. "Mr. Anderson, this is the official notice of eviction from this property. You have 30 days to vacate and return the keys." My dad stared at the paper, his hands trembling. "But this is our home." "No," I said, my voice calm, though my heart raced. "This is my property. I previously allowed you to use it, but that right has been revoked." My mom appeared behind the door. "What's going on?" "They're telling us we have to leave Debbie," my dad said. His voice trembled. My mom looked at me, her eyes filled with betrayal. "You're kicking us out of our home, out of our nursing home." "You've always known that legally this is my home," I replied. "You kept taking advantage of my kindness." "We have nowhere to go. Legally this is my home," I replied. "You kept taking advantage of my kindness." "We have nowhere to go." She said, "You can live with Travis," I replied. "He made it very clear a few months ago that I'm not family." My dad hung his head. He was wrong. We all were. It was too late. I said, "In 30 days, if you don't prepare to move out, your remaining belongings will be cleared out and the locks will be changed." "What about your parents? Why would you do that?" Her voice trembled with confusion. "Because as I said, you understood my point." As I turned away, my dad grabbed my arm. "We're truly sorry, Sabrina," he said, his eyes filled with tears. "Can't you give us another chance?" Tears in his eyes. "Can't you give us another chance?" I gently pulled my hand away. "Out. You've had many years. You've had countless chances, and I'll say it again, it's too late." That day, as I left the wooden house, I felt something heavy lift off my shoulders. I no longer needed their approval. I no longer needed them to define my worth. 30 days later, they quietly left. The wooden house was sold. I started a new chapter. About 3 months after kicking my parents out, that happened. It was a September day. Moved by the first signs of autumn, I received a call from the receptionist at my office. "Sabrina, there's someone here to see you. They say their last name is Anderson." My chest tightened. The restraining order was still in effect, but as long as they were in the lobby of the office building, technically they weren't violating it. I took a deep breath. "I'll be down in 5 minutes." When I reached the lobby, I saw them. My parents looked older, especially my dad. His shoulders were slumped. New wrinkles were deeply etched on my mom's face. They were wearing cheap clothes. I noticed a hole in one of my dad's shoes. "Sabrina." My mom said, her voice soft and shaky. She took a step forward, but instinctively I stepped back. "What are you doing here?" I asked, keeping my voice as calm as possible. "The restraining order is still in effect." My dad said, "We know, but we need to talk." "Talk through my lawyer," I replied. "We can't afford that," he said, his voice soft and pained. "Sabrina, we've lost everything." I looked closer. My mom's wedding ring was gone. The heirloom watch my dad inherited from my grandfather was missing. "Did you pawn them?" "After we left the wooden house, we rented an apartment," my dad continued. "But the rent was too high. Then the car broke down. We couldn't afford the repairs anymore. My savings had run out. He left me." "We tried to stay with Travis," my mom said, "but things between him and Laura aren't good. They have their own issues. Now we're living in a motel," my dad added. "We can afford to stay for 1 more week. After that, we don't know." Tears welled up in my mom's eyes. "Sabrina, I know you will help. You've always been a good girl, so caring. You've always looked out for us." "But always forgotten," I said softly. "Can't we overlook this?" my mom pleaded. "We are your parents." I looked out the large window in the lobby. The autumn sun dyed the fallen leaves on the street golden. It would have been so easy to go back to help them to hand over money to solve their problems like I used to. For a moment I felt tempted. Their suffering made my heart ache. But then I remembered Helen's words. "Sabrina, take care of yourself. If they don't treat you like family, you don't have to treat them like family." "I can't help you," I said. Simple words, but they were incredibly hard to say. But my dad started. "I'm not your bank." I cut him off. "I'm not your parent. And like Travis said, I'm not your family. So I don't owe you family obligations." My mom began to sob. "We were wrong. I admit that. Please give us 1 more chance." "No more chances," I said. "I'm done." I turned my back on them and walked toward the elevator. My heart ached, but at the same time I felt an unusual sense of relief. "At least let us stay 1 night." My dad called from behind me. I didn't respond. I pressed the elevator button. Before the door closed, I could hear my mom crying. Tears also welled up in my eyes. Not out of sadness, but because of the relief of finally choosing to respect myself. That night I called Aunt Helen. "My parents came to my office," I explained. "They need money," but I said no. "That must have been a tough decision," she said. "Yeah," I admitted. "But I think it was. The right one. It's time for me to start living my own life." "You're absolutely right, Sabrina." Helen said, "Your life belongs to you." A month later, I received a message from Laura. "I've decided to leave Travis. I've started the divorce process," she wrote. "After witnessing how he treated you and how he handled everything when your parents were in trouble, I finally see the real him." "That must be really hard," I replied, surprised by the wave of empathy I felt for her. "He has completely changed. Since I mentioned divorce, he's been falling apart. He stopped going to work. He's been drinking too much. He got fired last week." I looked out the window, feeling pain inside. I was wrong about the marriage, about pushing her away. I followed Travis, but it was a mistake. "Sabrina, let me say this. We were wrong about the marriage, about pushing her away. I followed Travis, but that was a mistake." After reading her message, I sat there for a long time. I didn't feel happy or satisfied with what my brother was going through. Instead, there was a strange emptiness. Now he was facing the consequences of his choices, just as I had endured for many years. That night, I walked past Travis's apartment. The windows were dark. Mail was overflowing in the mailbox. Should I knock? Did I have anything to say? Should I help? But I kept on walking. I paused for a moment. I wondered if I should knock. Did I have anything to say? Should I help? But I kept on walking. His pain wasn't my burden. It was time for him to learn that everyone has to take responsibility for their actions. As autumn turned to winter, my life found a new rhythm. Work at the digital marketing company was going well. I was promoted to assistant director and had my own team. The time and energy I once spent on family now I poured into my career and passions. Aunt Helen was still by my side. She called every Sunday and sometimes stayed at my apartment. She often said it was wonderful to see my life blossom. But the past didn't disappear completely. One December morning, I received a letter with familiar handwriting. It was my dad's 4th letter in 3 months. From the very first sentence, I noticed a change in tone. It started with a desperate plea. Eventually, it carried a deeper reflective meaning. I brewed some coffee, sat by the window, and opened the envelope. At this point, they were living in a small apartment. My dad had found a part-time job at a local hardware store. My mom started working at an elderly care facility, and they were still in therapy. I laid the letter on my lap and looked outside. With each letter, his words changed. They no longer beg for forgiveness or help. They talk about maturity and a growing awareness of how I've been treated and everything that went wrong. Therapy seems to be working for him. He's starting to understand what I've had to endure. However, I still haven't responded to any of his letters. That night, Helen called me. "Your dad called me yesterday. He's changing, Sabrina." I really believe that I said, "But it's still too early for reconciliation." "Of course," she replied. "Everything has its season. Right now, this is your season. You have to decide if they still have a place in your life." We talked a bit longer, and she promised to come over for dinner next week. After hanging up, I stood by the window again. The city lights softly shone through the snow. Life is strange. A year ago, I would have done anything to be accepted by my family. I tied my worth to their approval, but now I see things differently. My worth lives within me. I've learned how to love, respect, and protect myself. Maybe one day I'll reconcile with my dad. Maybe with the family, but if so, it has to be on equal terms. I will never let them define my worth again, and I will never become invisible again.